You're like,
Hey, welcome to Slow News Day Live. My name is Steve Poikinen. I'm here in beautiful Boulder Creek, California. I have been awake for less than an hour. This is gonna be you're quite literally going to be waking up with me. To those on the East Coast who have been like, damn dude, I've been up for like hours. I don't care. I was sleeping. um it is sharply 10 after 10 here, and yeah, I was up way past my bedtime. um I went to the thrift store a couple of weeks back, and I think I even put some of this on Twitter. I've got a few of them here, but like I got like the collected works of Aldous Huxley at the thrift store. So I'm reading a Huxley book like every other day right now. I'm currently reading The Island. It has got some wild fucking concepts to think about. I recommend exploring Huxley outside of Brave New World. I do. Brave New World is kind of the standard by which Huxley is set. But he wrote a ton of other shit, and you should not limit yourself just because you read one good book, uh, or haven't read one good book. At any rate, joining me this morning, and I can't believe I can't fucking believe this hasn't happened yet. Yeah, like but it hasn't. So we're gonna go ahead and do this now. Misty Winston, Sarcasm Stardust, Comrade Misty, Chavista Misty. How many names do you fucking have, lady?
I
Like,
have multiple personalities. They all
you're like a golden era rapper. You come out with a new persona every time you drop an album.
Dude, I'm far too white for that. Let's be real.
I want to get that fucking go ahead and take the copyright claim and play that play the beginning of the Method Man track where Chris Rock is like AKA, and then for like 3 straight minutes. You know what I'm talking about? Like,
yes, I know.
So yeah, you play too much, Pookie. How the hell are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me on. You're right. It's kind of crazy that this hasn't happened yet.
I know. I was thinking about that. I like as I was writing you to have you on the show. And we may be joined by your co-host at Facts on the Ground, Jesse Zerwell, as well. Although that remains that it'll be a nice surprise. Next time you guys come on, I'm going to tell them the show starts at 8 a.m. Pacific, so that we sort that bit out. Yeah, how's it going, man?
Pretty good. Just chilling. I'm excited to finally be on your show. We've been comrades on Twitter for a long time, and I've been a fan of your show. I mean, almost since it started. So yeah, it's good to be here.
I remember because I didn't have a Twitter account before I had the show. I had like intentionally avoided most social media, to be perfectly honest with you. And I got Twitter, and the only reason that I had any idea who you were is because I had seen tweets of yours on Jimmy Dore's show. And I was like, well, fuck, man. I was a little like, what if she doesn't like me, you know? So I'm glad that all worked out. I am.
Yeah.
You could have quite easily broken my spirit and sent me running away from Twitter, and I would have canceled my show.
A lot of followers that I have, actually. He's used a couple of my tweets, and every time I get like 500 messages, you're on Jimmy Dore, and I'm like, guys, I watch his show. I know, I'm watching too. So yeah, I'm glad that Jimmy inadvertently directed you my direction.
Hell yeah. For the people who are in the chat right now, and for the people who are going to be watching after the fact, if they aren't aware that you are co-hosting a show called Facts on the Ground, will you break that down and tell us what you're all about and what you've got going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay. I think it was in March. Jesse Zerwell contacted me on Twitter and asked if I would be interested. He was trying to, get a show off the ground, and he asked if I would come on and do an interview, talk mostly about Assange, a little bit about, the election and Bernie and whatever. So I went on his show. We had a really good conversation. He was really easy to talk to. And then maybe a few days later, he messaged me on Twitter and funnily enough said that Max Blumenthal, who he's kind of friends with, had texted him and said that he thought that Jesse and I should get together and co-host a show. And so I thought about it for a while, and I've been batting the idea of having a show around for a while. It's not really my thing. Like, I get really nervous and awkward on camera, but like we've talked about before, independent media is really sorely lacking. And not that I have the answers or that I'm going to be any better, but I feel like we just need more voices. So I was like, sure, why the hell not? So yeah, we got together and we kind of had like a meeting of where we, wanted to talk about the direction we wanted to take and all that stuff. And we both have very similar ideas on that. Like, we want to talk about the stuff that nobody else is talking about. The topics that people avoid, like Israel and missing and murdered Indigenous women. Those are the first two shows that we've done so far. We just had you on to talk about Assange. So we want to avoid worrying about getting clicks or donations or sponsorships or whatever. We're not worried about any of that. Like, we're in it just to tell the stories that aren't being told. So that's kind of the direction we want to take. We're just a baby show. We're just getting started. But we're trying to work it out.
Hell yeah. The first time that I heard you consider doing a show, because you've like talked about it. You've talked about it online a number of times. And it was in reference to like maybe doing a true crime thing, or like nothing remotely connected with the political sphere, because it is, I don't know, it fucking sucks up all the oxygen out of the room.
Yeah, it really does. Politics is also very depressing, and the issues, nobody wants to talk about genocide and torture and the loss of civil liberties. It's a downer. And so it was really hard for me to fully embrace the idea that I would be jumping into that world. Like, I mean, obviously I'm in that world on Twitter. I talk about it a lot, like, whatever, I'm informed. But, deciding to do a show and put yourself out there and really jump into that world head first was a lot to take on. It's something I really had to think about really hard, because it is depressing, and it's, it's a little overwhelming at times when you realize what we're up against and, trying to battle back against that and with your one small voice. So yeah, it's something I had to really consider hard.
Well, but you're so right. Like, it shouldn't be about clicks or finances. It should be about adding your voice to independent media to get information out that nobody else is touching. And that was definitely one of the things that I wanted to do with this show. And then I less than a year into it had started doing the Assange vigils. And so the direction that this show has taken has been more the, civil liberties, surveillance state, impending AI overlords kind of track. But yeah, I have people ask me a lot, like, how do you deal with the gravity of what it is that you talk about, and what do you do? So I'm going to ask you that. Like, you've got a few shows under your belt. You are fully cognizant of the weight of your, the weight of the subject material. When the camera goes off, what do you do to dump your brain out?
Smoke weed. I mean, that's really, I smoke weed to chill out, helps my anxiety. And I try to take, some time off every now and then and just like, go outside and play with my kids or whatever. It's hard. It's hard to shut off. My husband gets mad at me all the time because I'm constantly researching stuff and reading stuff and watching stuff, and he knows it gets to me, but at the same time, it's like I feel like it's my duty to be informed. And not even before I had a show or started doing the Assange vigils, I always kind of, especially since I had kids, I always felt like it was my job to like be informed and know what's going on in the world. And as depressing as it is, it's something that like I just can't seem to break away from. I feel like I have to know everything, which is kind of just my personality anyhow. But yeah, it's tough. It is tough. Not
No,
gonna
I
lie.
mean, I'm fucking little sick up here, and so the information itself is fascinating to me. Like I can compartmentalize that bit mostly right up until Whitney Webb's on the show,
Yeah.
and then like Whitney is this encyclopedic, sort of bubbly harbinger of doom, and it's like fuck, did she really say that? Yeah, she did, because you read the thing and you took the notes, so you know that it happened. But wow, dude, it's like after one of those shows, I don't really talk to anybody for the rest of the day. And like I go and I hug my kids, and then I'm like, all right, just leave me alone. The fucking it's me and a joint and a fishing pole for the rest of the fucking day.
Yeah, Whitney's very intense, that's for sure. You're right. She is an encyclopedia of really awful knowledge. And there are times that I feel genuinely bad for her. I am very grateful to her for the work that she does, but I can't imagine holding all of that in my head. That's got to be really tough for her.
I think it's way easier when you're an expat.
Yeah.
And you're
a little removed.
In fairly rural Chile, and you can just be like, okay, well, all of this is happening thousands of miles away. Yeah, it'll eventually affect me, but like her closest neighbors are fucking just wild ass anarchist programmers, and like that's her frame of reference for her neighborhood.
Yeah.
My neighbors want to raise ducks and bullfrogs. So I like,
I'm surrounded by cornfields, if it makes you feel any better.
I used to be. I grew up surrounded by cornfields. One of my earliest memories is getting chased by farmers' dogs through those cornfields, like having to either jump over or climb under barbed wire real quick. Yeah. The slow kids don't last very long. In my old neighborhood, fucking had to be svelte and quick.
Yeah.
Fuck, I had something. I did.
And
God damn it. Yenny, maybe I should fucking smoke a little herb about it. I don't know. I'm seriously, I've been up for now an hour and 5 minutes. I took the mushrooms. I'm hoping those kick in here shortly. And I think that so psilocybin is now on the ballot in Oregon, and I'm trying to like put together the picture of a state that is like, yes, we will absolutely make plant-based psychedelics available legally in small amounts, and we also have Blackwater in Portland bashing the heads of people. It's open season on journalists. 30 journalists have been shot at and arrested just in Portland in the last like 48 hours. And it's a schizophrenic state, and I think it's sort of a microcosm of the country in that regard. The schizophrenia may be the wrong term. Like, the United States has multiple personality disorder.
Absolutely.
And I kind of want to flesh that concept out a little bit.
Well, I think that's I think you're dead on, and I think that's kind of been by design. I mean, we know that they use all these, you know, little points to keep us divided, so that we aren't looking at the man behind the curtain. So, you know, they want us to fight about abortion, and they want us to fight about legalizing marijuana, and they want us to fight about gun control, and they want us to fight about whatever. So yeah, I think that that's kind of been by design. They want us all focused on 100 issues that in the grand scheme of things don't really matter until we address the bigger issue. And that's, you know, the corporate control of government. So yeah, I mean, I think that's just kind of what they've been hoping to accomplish and have been very effective at doing.
I'm looking at the chat right now. Look, so there are absolutely therapeutic properties for psilocybin animal farm dance. There's been a number of studies that have come out, and if you're active on Twitter, I would go follow the account The Daily Shroom, because the account is basically amplifying research done into psychedelic medicine. I will say that, like, only in the West would we consider legalizing small amounts of psychedelics and still criminalizing large amounts of psychedelics, based solely off of, you know, if you microdose, you can increase your productivity and therefore increase the profit margins for your employer. Like, that's one of the horrific side angles, I think, out of all of that. Like, you could, as Bill Hicks said, take a squeegee to your third eye.
Yeah.
You could, but then you would realize that, you know, we're all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively, and there would be significantly less. We wouldn't do military contractors a damn bit of good to have a West running around with a blasted open fucking third eye, because we'd all go.
That's a good point. That is such a good point. Like, nobody ever talks about that aspect of it. We always talk about, you know, they don't want to legalize marijuana because the pharmaceutical companies and the alcohol lobbies don't want it. But that's such a good point. They don't want you to have mind-opening substances. They want you to be completely unaware of what is going on. And that's, I mean, anybody who's ever done psychedelics knows that it's life-changing. You know, like, it really is. It's a mind-opening experience.
Well, it allows you to feel incredibly tiny with respect to the universe without being intimidated or afraid by that smallness.
Yes.
Because there is that sort of broader connection to everything.
And it's actually kind of beautiful. It's not scary. It's not overwhelming. It's like, it's a beautiful tiny, like, you understand. I mean, at least for me, that was my experience. You suddenly understand that you're just this tiny little piece of something so much bigger than yourself. And instead of being overwhelming, that's just really beautiful. You know, like, it just feels really life affirming, kind of. At least that was my experience. I mean, I'm sure everybody's had their own, but
yeah, I mean, like, I've had a couple of fucking bad trips in my day, but on a long enough timeline, with the amount of psychedelics that I was doing at the time, that was pretty inevitable.
Yeah.
You know? when you're I guess when your main home is wherever hotel room or campground parking lot you crash out in every night for a number of years, and you are allegedly selling psychedelics in those establishments, the odds significantly increase that you may have a bad experience. We do have Jesse Zerwell with us now.
Yay, Jesse!
Hey, what's up,
Glad
y'all?
you could make it, man.
Sorry, I'm a little tardy.
I was just telling them that it's not unusual for you to be a little tardy.
Something I have to work on.
In the chat, it says psilocybin is legal in Oakland, California. Joy, I don't know if it's legal, but I know it's decriminalized. I don't know if legal. It might be. I don't know, man. I don't get up to Oakland a lot. I know here in Santa Cruz County, it's not just psilocybin. It's all entheogens, which are plant-based psychedelics. Which is why I've been smoking a decent amount of changa over the last like 6 or 7 months, because it's fucking decriminalized here. And I've got a friend who is growing and putting it together. We already talked about the show, Jesse. We moved on.
Okay.
I gave a brief, like, how we kind of hooked up and got it all started. So
I did see a question in the chat back here. I'm gonna see if I can find it again. There we go. What would an ideal constitution for modern times look like, and how would it differ from the ones we have now?
Jesus,
so I'm gonna give you a softball here, Jesse, and open it up with
Who asked that shit?
Rob Juno asked that shit.
Rob, that's a massive question, my friend. Dude.
It's worth exploring. I know that.
We could spend the whole show on that. Jeez Louise.
Right off the bat, I will say that the Bill of Rights would be included in the preamble, and then it would be fleshed out even further to include both a workers' Bill of Rights and a digital Bill of Rights. But yeah, I mean, we can riff on that for a little bit.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Well,
that's what you get for being late.
I'm not a constitutional expert, so I don't. And whenever somebody talks of ideals, I get a little wary, because what is an ideal aside from an idea of perfection? So we're talking about what would the perfect constitution look like here. I don't think
we're not. I don't think perfect is the right way to put it. But yeah, I mean, it's phrased as what would an ideal constitution look like? How about what would a reasonable constitution look like? If we remove idealism from it and just went with what are basic protections that we need coded into our society, what would that look like? Because it's easily arguable that we don't have that right now.
Right. Well, I agree with everything you mentioned that should be included. And I'd also add, if there were some way to do so, more restrictions on the government and especially the president's ability to wage war. The power that's granted to the military through the Constitution, I think, needs to be constricted severely if we're going by what we have now as an example. But yeah, a workers' Bill of Rights, a digital Bill of Rights, I agree with both of those. And they're both clearly sorely missing from what we call our Constitution today. So yeah, in short, I would say that's my short answer.
Misty, do you have any, you want to add to that here real quick?
That's pretty, I mean, definitely a digital Bill of Rights. Animal Farm Dance, I always want to say that wrong. Animal Farm Dance said the same thing. Like, a digital Bill of Rights is absolutely necessary at this point, especially given that we're seeing, the tech companies overstep their bounds and ban people, and I think they have way too much power, and that needs to be reined in, and it needs to happen 10 years ago, really.
Well, there's no daylight between tech companies and the government.
Yeah,
and there hasn't been since when I was doing you guys' show the other day and we started talking about SOPA and PIPA, the backlash to that, to gaining or maintaining that small amount of digital freedom, the backlash to that was the near uniformity in which big tech merged with government. And so now it's in big tech's interest to side with government in a uniform fashion. And I don't see a way out of social media as a news aggregator with little satellite bubbles swirling around it that people never break out of and only communicate inside those bubbles. I don't see a way out of that without a serious digital revolution, and that could get incredibly messy.
I think it's inevitable that it would get incredibly messy. Especially given that there is no daylight in between the tech companies and the government. They do not want to relinquish that power. They are absolutely controlling every bit of information that you can see, and they love that. It's ideal for them. So I think that's one of the big fights that we have on our hands.
And when we say government, the seamlessness between the tech companies and the government, we could get a little micro with that and talk about how in the recent protests, for example, the protests that are happening now in Portland over the murder of George Floyd, how police have partnered with, I think it's a Twitter cutout, to monitor the Twitter accounts of activists and essentially keep tabs on them during these, I think, justified protests. So when we say government, it's not just that, James Clapper can read our emails. It goes to that level where it's affecting us, on the streets, in our
local level. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
And it's more than that, because right after that precinct burnt in Minnesota, there was a press conference given, and one of the subjects of that press conference we're working with contact tracing software providers to basically hunt and track activists. And that's how they were trying to determine who had, who may have been involved in property damage crimes or arson or whatever. I think that you could make a pretty convincing argument that the vast majority of that is being done by agents provocateurs or the literally, on-duty law enforcement. But there were people like me who were screaming when we first started hearing about this contact tracing software that this is, a pretext. This is not something that's going to be used solely for, determining who may be a carrier, or some shit like that. But once you've got a set of surveillance and track and trace tools, the potential for widespread abuse is almost unlimited. And without citizen safeguards on technology like that, it's always going to be abused. There's no invisible hand of the free AI market guiding this into a correct avenue. It's corruption breeds more corruption, and abuse. And if there aren't guaranteed safeguards put into place, if there aren't mass collectives of hacktivists that are out running around in the digital space, kind of on the front lines protecting our individual digital freedom, then it will be used as a totalitarian surveillance machine.
Steve, do you think there's any way that a government entity or organizational body of any kind could guarantee that digital freedom for us, or do you think it has to be decentralized, independent collectives, maybe, who take the initiative to do that? Because I can't see that ever falling under the purview of law enforcement or government without them just constricting our rights even further.
Not in a centralized government, no. You would have to basically have not necessarily like autonomous states, but I guess the way to describe it would be Soviet states in the truest, most dictionary definition of that, where you've got multiple functioning republics inside of a broader territorial area that defines these lines as country. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
The problem with centralization is that it rewards corruption, and it rewards abuse, and it rewards grift. And I just as a form of government, it is one of the, I don't know, least likely to succeed in terms of guaranteeing any sort of freedoms to its citizenry. But it is one of the most likely to succeed in terms of accumulation of power. And that accumulation of power is almost always won by some expression of terrorism. I don't know. That we still get yelled at for dead air on this show too.
So the answer to my question then would be no. There's really no reasonable, feasible governmental approach to guaranteeing our digital rights.
I think what you can do is you can build and maintain a healthy rebellion of sorts in the digital space easier than you can build and maintain a rebellion in the physical space. In the physical space in 2020, we're witnessing right now what happens when you stand up to an authoritarian regime.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, they will hire private military contractors, dress them up in DHS camo, and send them into your neighborhood or send them into your downtown. Which honestly makes me question the legitimacy of targeting federal buildings as places of protest. And as much as I can't fucking stand Nick Brana, what the organizers below him the idea that they came up with of going into the neighborhoods of elected officials and trying to deliver demands for a people's stimulus, that's a decent idea, because that's making people uncomfortable where they sleep. That's not giving them an opportunity to go, there's roving mobs of anarchists who's spray painting the buildings, and that's tyranny. It's you've got to make people uncomfortable where they sleep if they're people who are exercising their power in ways that can be best described as terrorism. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Jesse, by the way, I've been awake for like an hour and a half. So I'm like,
he's riding the struggle bus today.
I'm like I woke up hella early, and I'm like, I can go back to sleep for an hour. And no, I woke up at like 20 after 9 and went, shit, no fucking show.
That never works out.
we're quite like everyone's quite literally waking up with me right now, and this is basically how my thought process works until the day's sort of evened itself out a little bit. I'm fucking all over the place, and
I don't function till afternoon, so I get it.
yeah, no, the caffeine and the moderate amount of psilocybin that I ingested is just now starting to like mesh together to form this cohesive ramble that that I call Slow News Day.
That should be the new slogan. Cohesive ramblings.
It's a little wordy. It's a little wordy.
Coordinate to cohesive ramblings.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I'll give it a shot. I will. I'll put anything on a t-shirt. I'm kidding.
Jack said waking up with Steve.
Yeah.
Waking up with Steve.
It's
there you
true.
Go. At least for the Sunday show.
I guarantee, it's fucking. This is heathens church right here.
Oh, and I love your little heathens in the chat.
Yeah, I have the best fucking live chat on YouTube, and I'm not just blowing smoke up their ass, man. I'm not like I've been in the chat on other channels, and it's just a bunch of cannibals in there fucking going at each other.
I usually avoid the chats on most shows because it's annoying. But like the Action for Assange chat and your chat, I actually like participate in, and I love them all. They're the best.
Let's see. Perhaps the most insane aspects that were evaluated by what we watch, read, and do, when factually many are only touching on others' fucked up perspectives. So I mean, okay. So that kind of brings me to a different track here. But we can talk about a little bit the role of independent media as an aggregator of original thought versus what independent media is currently, which is an aggregator of establishment media protocols.
Yes. I'm so glad. Yes, this needs to be talked about far more often than it is being talked about. Independent media, and I don't mean to like pick on anybody in particular or, shit on anybody, any content creator, but it's over the past, definitely since 2016, independent media sucks so hard. It above people who, I mean, we've talked before, they show the mainstream media clip and then they make fun of Rachel Maddow, or they make fun of Chris Cuomo, or they make fun of Wolf Blitzer, and then they move to the next thing. They're talking about important issues. They're not talking about ways that we can actually, form an opposition to the bullshit that's going on. It's a bunch of like bias confirming bullshit, and it's a bunch of people who are more worried about getting clicks and likes and keeping their donors and subscribers happy, which listen, that's a hustle. I understand entirely that for the people who have decided to like make it a living, they have to kind of worry about that stuff. But at the same time, if you're in independent media and you're not covering stories that need covered that aren't being covered in mainstream media, you're failing. You're not doing your job. Like, there are so many issues that just are not covered because none of these people will touch it. I mean, Julian Assange is a monumental example of that. None of them will talk about it. Nobody. And it's not that we haven't asked. I know that you guys have asked. I've tweeted at people trying to get them to cover Julian Assange. They won't do it. And it's unbelievably frustrating because we need a legitimate, independent, adversarial media now more than ever. And that's not to say that there isn't, there aren't some people out there doing good work. There absolutely are. There's, the Susie Dawson and the Slow News Day and the Action for Assange and the Caitlin Johnstones. And there are people out there doing good work, but the big names in independent media have become mainstream media light. They're far more worried about, not pissing anybody off and keeping a broad base so that they can, continue their donor scheme. That it's I mean, it's depressing. We need it more now than ever. So it's really, and it needs to be talked about. Like, we need to talk about, you know, how desperately we really need those people to step up. If you have a huge platform and you're not covering these issues, you're doing us a disservice massively. Sorry, ramble over.
I agree. I think there's certainly a place in the news for Biden's latest gaffe or some sort of Trump palace intrigue, but that to me is more infotainment than information, than useful information, than news. And it seems like this Daily Show model of comedy fused with some sort of political point of view, it's trickled down into independent media. And you know, it worked as the Daily Show. It was successful on mainstream television, and perhaps that's why so many feel compelled to copy the model now. I don't know, but as Misty said, it really is doing a disservice to people who are trying to ingest independent media that's getting at stories that are not being told, that crucially need to be told. And I always go back to what Amira Haas, who's an Israeli journalist who lives in Gaza, what she said to the British journalist Robert Fisk, that the journalist's job is to monitor the centers of power, especially when those centers of power are trying to lie us into or get us to go to war. And I just don't see any kind of pushback like that coming from a lot of the shows that would fall under the umbrella we're currently carrying in this conversation. So the problem with that is twofold, I think. How can you get these people with platforms to cover the issues that really should be covered but aren't being covered? You know, I don't know how you do that unless there's like a mass uprising of their viewership. And then the other part of the problem is that then makes it harder for people to find legitimate independent media and sort of distinguish legitimate independent media from so much of the nonsense that's out there. Because if you're so used to getting your news from one source that is afraid to really do any kind of hard-hitting journalism, and then all of a sudden you're hit in the face with, you know, an outlet that's doing actual adversarial journalism, it can be like an immediate crisis of conscience where you don't know what's true anymore, because, well, I've been listening to so-and-so and they've been telling me this, and now all of a sudden this is coming out from this source I've never heard of, even though it might be a reliable independent adversarial source.
I'm glad you're touching on that, because it underscores something that we've talked about here on the show before. And my belief is that everybody's on a path, you know, and that path leads to, if not enlightenment, then a better understanding of the physical space that we occupy and the way that it works. What I've found is through almost 2 years of doing this show, is that people are less willing to go on a journey than I originally thought. and that they'll find a content creator who only exists to confirm biases and whose whole gig is centered around that Daily Show or Young Turk's business model of let's wag our at establishment media and then immediately move on to the next clip where we wag our finger at establishment media and, oh, isn't established media so bad? Now subscribe to my Patreon to find out more about why establishment media is bad. And it's like, if it's somebody's first day and they're just hearing for the first time that establishment media is bad, then like, yeah, I can see the value in doing that show. But you've got to be able to, or you've got to be willing to keep walking. You've got to be willing to keep. And there's like, my hope for this show was that it would kind of bridge people from horse race or confirmation bias shows, and then open them up to a bunch of people who go like way deeper into specific issues than I do, and when you're butting up against those bias confirmation shows, it sucks because they've got such a grip on their audience, and they've got their audience so well trained to only respond to the content that they cover, that when you try and do a show that talks about shit that has just never entered into their consciousness, they're like, I'm lost. I need Tom Hartman's Padawan to comfort me. I need 7 videos a day about Elizabeth Warren being a horrible person. I don't know, dude. I fucking bullshit. You need to take a heroic dose of psilocybin, and you need to wander around outdoors in various states of undress, and you need to fucking get in touch with a bit more, I don't know, like esoteric, but at the same time entirely tangible concepts.
Yeah, and
well, that's why I like shows like yours so much, because yeah, sure, there are those shows that people, they're kind of trained to watch and everything, but there are plenty of people out there looking for more. There's a huge hole where the people in your chat right now are people who want to know more. They want to be informed, and there's plenty of people out there, and there's nobody talking to them. And I give credit to some of those shows for kind of being like a gateway drug to radicalism, maybe. Some of them are not. Some of them are very the Young Turks, and I know.
Well, some of them pose as the gateway drug to radicalism, but in fact, what they're doing is making sure that they've got an army of good little Democrats who are going to impotently rage against a system that they're tripping over their own dicks to be a part of. Yeah,
so true. Absolutely, so true.
Yeah, and I think they're like the media version of what the NatSec state represents to the people who want to preserve the Clinton, Obama, even Bush Jr. status quo. National security state and the military industrial complex loved those eras of the American presidency, because they basically had, and they still do pretty much, based on the defense bill that was just passed, carte blanche to do anything. And that's sort of how these shows function. I think they have a bias toward a politician like Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama, Bill Clinton. They still, I don't know if they're tricking themselves or if they actually believe that these are benevolent people who have done good things and aren't all war criminals, or if they know and they just don't care. Either option isn't good, but they serve as sort of the commentariat for that status quo that I guess they want to preserve too, because there's something in it for them. They have skin in the game, and I'm not saying they get kickbacks or anything, but it's a status quo they prefer, and I think that's what they're serving, whether wittingly or unwittingly. I think that's what those shows are doing, and that's their function, again, whether wittingly or unwittingly.
They're creating a well-heeled resistance that you'll never see getting tear gassed. you'll never like that's why I have a lot of respect for what Pasta and Fee have done with the Convo Couch, is that they'll go and put themselves right in the middle of the shit, and without like too many reservations about it. You are never going to see a Kyle Kalinske do that. You're never going to see
getting tear gassed.
Huh?
You're not going to see Mehdi Hassan getting tear gassed.
Never. Are you good? You're never going to see anyone who is remotely connected to the Intercept getting tear gassed. In fact, a lot of those people grow up, they're going to be ordering the tear gas, or they'll comment on it from a well-appointed flat, and that's it. That's it. Oh, it's a shame the way that this government is reacting towards these people who want some rights, but maybe if they protested a little different.
Yeah.
And that's what you'll see from those fucking morons, dude. Mehdi Hassan has done more to further U.S. imperialism than just about anyone who's connected with the Intercept. And that includes Pierre Omidyar, who funds fucking death squads.
Yeah. He's so left, though. He's so left. He always brags about being so left, and then he just guest hosted on MSNBC the other day. Fuck that guy. Can't stand him. He's such a turd.
What I don't understand about the Intercept's model is that they're funded by Omidyar, so they ostensibly have millions, if not billions, behind them. Yet I'm on their newsletter. I say know your enemies, and it's like incessant, the emails I get from them asking for donations from readers, especially in this time when people are praying for a $1,200 check, a one-time $1,200 check. They're making it seem like they're in dire straits, like they're some sort of local public outlet that's about to go under. I really don't understand that model, and it's
so what that's for, because I do understand a little bit of that model. What that is for is it gives the reader the sense that they're helping to curate the content, and it's a pretty fucking dirty trick, if you ask me. Because there's no way that my $5 a month does anything against Omidyar's billions or against the high dollar donors to the Intercept. And that's why you see a lot of horse race stories. That's why you see a lot of like, oh, this one particular politician is bad, or this one particular school of thought or ideology is harmful. But you're very rarely are you going to see original content that breaks down the modalities of control and the mechanisms of control in a way that empowers people to do something about it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like we can have a almost out of body ivory tower intellectual conversation, as the Intercept, but in terms of practical solutions to problems that face all of us every day, you're not going to see any of that shit.
Yeah, and some of the pieces that get published on there, well, two things about the Intercept. The first is that if you look at their roster of journalists, a lot of them come from the New York Times or MSNBC, and yeah, people can have a sea change in their thinking and go from working for a mainstream outlet to being an adversarial journalist. I think Chris Hedges is a perfect example of that. But a lot of these people, can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Every once in a while, it'll tell you that your mic is being noisy, but don't worry about that shit.
Okay. But a lot of these people who come from MSNBC and the New York Times and now work at The Intercept, like Robert Mackey came from the New York Times, James Risen came from the New York Times. I don't think these people, if they even had any kind of adversarial bone in them, have one anymore. I mean, James Risen, every interview I've listened to with that guy, his primary concern with the story is it a good story? So you should be a novelist then, if that's your primary concern for writing. And at least two of the people, he's basically exploited as sources, as whistleblowing sources, have ended up in jail. Reality Winner being one of them. And, he can have his defense fund for her all he wants, but the fact is that he relied on a joke of intelligence data, which Aaron Mate covered in an interview with him a while back on The Real News. People should go back and watch that. James Risen actually ends up hanging up on Aaron after Aaron.
Yeah, that was a great interview.
Yeah, and so, if these people even had an adversarial bone in their body, it's gone. And I think that's the bulk of the content now that you see on The Intercept. It's this, it's like Robert Mackey comparing what Assad is doing, trying to save Syria from Wahhabi Contras, to the Spanish Civil War. It's just absurd content. And,
well, Assad as Franco is a picture that people in the West can understand if they've been introduced to that particular argument or that particular era of European history. Mm-hmm. And there's I talk about this fucking article all the time, man, but there's an article essay really called 3 Cheers for Socialism. It was written by a Christian Scientist. If you haven't read it, I'll send it to you after the interview. I certainly don't agree with everything in the article, but there's some undeniable paragraphs, and one of them begins with, Americans as a rule don't know their own history. And another one of those undeniable paragraphs begins with, America is the most propagandized country in existence. And if we accept those as truths, near unilateral, if we accept that, then you can start to see how easily it is to manipulate a population of 300 million people. And I think that the fact that we still have one political party masquerading as two is very emblematic of that. To your point about The Intercept and James Risen, though, I need to point out that it's not just Risen, it's always Matthew Cole.
I was trying to think of his name. He came from MSNBC. Yeah. He was involved in the Reality Winner story.
He co-wrote it with Li Fang and a couple other people. And Matthew Cole was the first person that covered John Kiriaku's story.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no, you can chalk 3 whistleblowers up to Matthew Cole, the outing of them. And you're right, people never talk about what was in those Reality Winner documents. And what was in those documents did more to blow holes in Russiagate than confirm it.
Mm-hmm.
It totally made the narrative fall apart.
Yeah.
Which has always fascinated me, because Reality Winner has been incarcerated for 1,150 days now. Longest serving sentence under the Espionage Act passed out to anyone. And what she did was shoot a hole in the water. Why do you keep saying fucking Watergate? Russiagate narrative. We had her mom and her sister on the Free Assange vigil. And I was kind of angry about that. I'm dude, if we have to sit here and listen to people talk about Russiagate for a fucking hour, my head's gonna explode.
Mm-hmm.
And they did, we managed to go through that entire conversation with the word Russia coming up once. it was one of those like giant sighs of relief. But to this day, she thinks that Russia hacked our freedom. Like, and I don't understand how looking at that material, you could come to that conclusion.
Reality Winner still believes that?
I think so. Her family does.
I think her mom does for sure. Yeah, her mom does for sure. She tweets about it often. It's really unfortunate. It's kind of why like that's a tough one because the Russia stuff. I mean, if you know me, you know that stuff really gets under my skin. It annoys me beyond belief. But yeah, it's really unfortunate that they still buy into that. I mean, despite the fact that surely they have to know that it's. I guess maybe they don't. I don't know. It's. There's no excuse for her to still be in jail. There's absolutely no reason for her to be in jail. And now she's been diagnosed with COVID-19, and she should absolutely be released. That's I'm not even debating that. But yeah, what she released definitely did not do Russiagate any favors at all.
No, it's a laughable document, but as Steve said, it did blow a hole in the entire thing. The entire escapade quite early on, but nobody wanted to pay attention to that. Everybody wanted to wait for,
Bobby Mueller.
Yeah,
Bobby Mueller coming to the rescue.
Savior Mueller to come and
smoking gun. The walls are closed again.
Report.
Yeah, and if that was another huge failure, especially of mainstream journalism. I mean, a lot of independent journalistic outlets fell victim to it too, because there's this innate fetish to just rail against Trump no matter what he does. Yeah, he may not be the leader you want to meet with Kim Jong-un, right? To negotiate peace between North and South Korea, and between North Korea and the United States, but he made a move to get it done. I supported him in the act of negotiating, especially since if you look at South Korea, 80% of South Koreans want reunification. They want peace with North Korea. When you're just like, never Trump, you just scupper, you make it impossible for things like that to happen from the beginning, because
if you're the president of the United States, you have to be willing and ready to meet with any world leader for any. I mean, people gave Tulsi Gabbard so much shit for going to meet with Assad. That's like one of the coolest things she's ever done. I mean,
Nancy Pelosi met with her years before that.
I mean, you have to if you're wanting to be a leader on the world stage.
With him, I should say. Sorry.
That's okay. You have to be willing to meet with people you don't agree with, and you have to be willing to have uncomfortable conversations with the leaders of other countries in order to work shit out. Really, that whole mentality boggles my mind that people would get. And it's not really that they're angry at him for doing it. It's just that it's Trump. And anything Trump does. I mean, Trump could cure cancer and people would find fault in it. There would be people freaking out and finding some reason to bitch and complain. Trump's a piece of shit. Like, let's not get it twisted. But I mean, if you let, I think Ron Placone said something a long ass time ago. You can hate Trump, but you can't let him steal your critical thinking skills. You have to maintain, some ability to think clearly and to think rationally about, real life stuff. Yes, he's a piece of shit, but if he does something good, I'll give credit where it's due. It doesn't mean that you agree with him, you like him, you support him, or you're going to vote for him. But if he does something cool, great. It's just ridiculous, the Trump derangement syndrome. It's so, and you have the home of progressives for 3 years at the top of their lungs preaching Russiagate.
I had somebody try to tell me that the Young Turks have never tried to pretend to their audience that they're anything other than MSNBC light. And I'm like, are you fucking, where were you for those 3 years while they were screaming that they were the home of the progressives? Where were you for that?
thing. That's their whole. It's like their tagline.
Are they still trying to run with that shit?
No, I stopped watching them a long ass time ago. I mean, I'll catch clips when people send it to me to like make fun of them. But that's about all I do. Like I can't stand any of that. Like they're awful. Sorry guys, if you like Young Turks, I'm sorry, but they're awful.
I don't think this is the show for the Young Turks audience. I don't think this is where those people land for like, oh, I'll take a foray into independent media and go from cable news on the internet guy to fucking Steve Poikonen and Slow News Day. Like, I don't think that's how that progression works. If that's
really, I'm not sorry. If we're being honest, I'm really not sorry. Like, I'm not. They're awful. They suck, and you should stop watching them if you do. Like, they're really terrible. They're one of those people I was talking about earlier that won't touch any real issues, and the stuff that they do touch it's basically Rachel Maddow-esque. Slightly less ridiculous.
Yeah, before I started calling Jink cable news on the internet guy, like I for years have referred to TYT's MSNBC with occasional swears.
Yeah.
And like that's all they've ever brought to the table. Even when they had Jimmy Dore on their main show, like he was obviously odd man out.
Mm-hmm.
He was obvious.
That was the only redeeming quality about that network. I mean, I used to love Aggressive Progressives. It was a great show. When he was on the main show, it was always the only time it was ever tolerable. And when he left, basically, well, no, I stopped watching them long before that. I stopped watching them. I mean, like early on in 2016, I think. Because honestly, I never really liked him anyway. It was just kind of, there was a void. There was not a lot of other alternative sources. So
that's what's so nefarious about what they do and about what their model is. And it's so disappointing that so many other content creators have chosen the lucrative aspects of that model over doing actual fucking journalism. You look like you want to say something, Jesse, so please do. But real quick, my chat has moved on to kicking around Crystal Ball, and there's a discussion about Amy Goodman going on.
Breaks my heart, but go ahead,
Breaks
Jesse.
my fucking dead little black heart, dude.
I don't know what happened with Amy Goodman. What happened with Amy Goodman?
She's fucking...
Yeah, go ahead.
She got Trump derangement syndrome. She got on board with the Russiagate. Yeah, she had Glenn Greenwald on a dozen times to give the anti-Russiagate viewpoint. But then,
You're talking about in general. I thought something specific happened with her recently.
No, she just over the course of the past 3 years has gone very downhill. And I used to have a monumental lady crush on Amy Goodman. And watching her recently, it legitimately hurts. It's painful.
She's siding with the regime change porn over Syria, pretty consistently too.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
and Josh always brings up Sleepy. Josh always brings up Democracy Now's coverage on East Timor as like one of the benchmarks of adversarial journalism that we've had over the last several years. And that's true. And that's what makes all of this fucking
depressing.
Seem like a just giant dick punch, dude. It's rough.
Well, I don't have a dick, but I mean, it definitely sucks.
Kick you right in the lady boner.
Right in the labia.
It's a kidney punch for sure, and but I'm not surprised. A lot of smart people have gotten swept up in this basically mass delusion, and they can't let it go for whatever reason. I've met so many people who are otherwise very politically astute, very aware of what's happening in the world, and their justification to me for their hate for, or their belief that Trump is a Russian asset, or has ties to the Kremlin, et cetera, there's no concrete evidence ever presented. It's just, well, I've got a feeling. You saw how he and Putin acted toward each other in
They didn't have that WWE stare down, and that's
Yeah.
how I know that they're colluding. You know,
Yeah.
Really?
It's like some weird geopoliticized version of Rocky IV, and that they've subscribed to, and I don't have an answer for how you can get past that. If someone's convinced themselves that there's something nefarious going on, even without evidence, they've convinced themselves, and you can show them all the evidence in the world, and it might change some people's minds. But so many people I know are just committed to the idea that there must be a tie between Trump and Russia. You know, aside from the one where he tried to get his hotel built and basically couldn't because nobody wanted to do business with him.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to jump subjects here real quick, but all I'll say on that, man, because there are some people that are really trying to defend democracy now in the chat. And like, dude, nobody's saying you have to stop watching them.
I still watch.
You know, yeah, like that's not the point. The point is to make you a little bit more aware.
Yes,
of
it's
what you're
okay to
watching.
hold those people accountable. Like if they're doing a shitty job on something, it's okay. That doesn't mean that you hate them or that you're not going to watch them or you don't support them. I will always have mad love for Amy Goodman. She is an incredible journalist, but watching her kind of downfall over the past 3 years is sad to me. And I'm going to say that out loud because, you know, that's what I do.
Right. Yeah, dude, there's a book, Jesse, by a guy named Joel Whitney, and it's called Finks: How the CIA Tricked the World's Smartest Journalists. And it starts with like pre-Mockingbird and kind of takes us up to right about where we are now. Mm-hmm. And this is, I mean, it's exactly what you were referring to when you were talking about, you know, really smart people getting swept up in this. It's deliberate. This atmosphere has been created around Russiagate and now around coronavirus, where there are acceptable parameters of debate and acceptable parameters of discussion, and anything that wanders outside of those very clearly defined barriers becomes instantly dismissible as conspiracy, instead of what journalism is, which is asking questions that need to be asked regardless of how uncomfortable it makes the person who is being asked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I fully agree with that. And another maybe ironic or grotesque sort of blowback from the 3 years of this Russiagate hysteria has been that I don't even call them journalists, you know, TV personalities like Sean Hannity, for example, who, you know, just out of his undying love for Trump was on Trump's side de facto the whole time. But it sort of validates people like that, at least in the minds of the viewers who watch those shows and recommend them to friends. And I think we're going to see more blowback from Russiagate still to come. We're starting to see it with Bountygate, you know, this just absurd attempt to blame Russia for paying bounties to the Taliban to kill American soldiers, when the Taliban has been literally just, I think Max said this on Pushback, but grinding down the American military there for you know, almost 20 years now. Then they haven't needed, you know, Russians to pay them bounties to kill American soldiers. And of course, this Bountygate story breaks right before there were supposed to be crucial peace negotiations between the Taliban and the U.S. I forget where they were going to be brokered, but you know, it goes by a playbook. it was obviously a planted story, unsourced. Official say is basically newspeak for unsourced, and yeah, and now I think there are probably a fair amount of people out there who do believe that Russia is paying the Taliban to kill American soldiers, and it's simply not even a truth. It's
good little consumers of corporate media are never wrong, Jesse. Never, never. They're just ask them; they're happy to tell you about it. I did see somebody
never lie to us. That's ridiculous.
Not someone who's so heavily incentivized to do so, at any rate. I mean, that's just crazy talk. That's just wild. There was somebody in my chat that was like, nobody ever mentions Israel interfering in our elections. I did.
Yeah.
I did on Twitter a lot.
There's a slow news day. There's a few slow news day videos on that. And links in the description, because it was before I had a Sleepy Josh, so I couldn't put articles up on the screen. But yeah, it was reported in Haaretz and the New Jerusalem Post that Bibi got caught on a hot mic bragging about how Trump was in his pocket.
Yep.
Bragging.
That, though.
And this was right after they had renamed the Golan Heights the Trump Heights.
Yeah.
And I mean, look, there are two eyes intelligence sharing networks, and one is the US and the UK, and that forms the bulwark of the Five Eyes global information sharing network. The other two eyes is the US and Israel. And this is all explained in excellent detail in Susie Dawson's One versus Five Eye series. So you don't have to take my word for it. You don't. You can go and look at the research that Susie did and take that, instead of listening to me. If you should go watch that series. But the way that the relationship between the US and Israel works is that more often than not, it's hard to tell who is whose client state.
Right. It seems like we're becoming more and more Israel's client state.
I think we're the muscle. We're their muscle. They use us for the military support, and
Yeah. Well,
if you go back in history and you look at the National Crime Syndicate that sprout up in the U.S. In the late mid 1880s onto what became like the mobster era in the Roaring 20s and whatnot. The National Crime Syndicate was the Sicilian Mafia and the Jewish Mafia, and the Sicilian Mafia was used as the enforcement brigade for the Jewish Mafia. And there's nothing, I'm probably going to get like, you're anti-Semitic, or some shit like that, for reciting history. I didn't make it happen. I'm actually not a reincarnation of Meyer Lansky. It's not how that works. But I mean, if you go back, Ed Whitney Webb did a tremendous job breaking this down in her Epstein series last year. The history that the National Crime Syndicate has played in this child rape trafficking network of global exploitation, blackmail, abuse, and profit sharing. If you look at that and you look at our current relationship with the state of Israel, then what you see is continuity of government for almost a century. And when people refer to the U.S. government as like a mafia or a mob rule kind of thing, that's an accurate descriptor. But it always it falls short of reality. People think that, like, fucking Scarface is running the country right now, and that's not what that's not what Lucky Luciano's job was. Lucky Luciano's job, the original Scarface, his job was enforcement, and that's, in terms of military, maybe. In terms of operating a global pyramid scheme with this two eyes top of the pyramid and then everybody else. At least that's my opinion. I don't know.
Well, I think the relationship between the United States and Israel has been strong since, I want to say, after Eisenhower left office is when it really started to ramp up the bond between the U.S. and Israel. And, there was a time in 1956 when Israel invaded the Suez, I believe. And why am I forgetting his name? I just said it. Eisenhower, he said, you have to remove yourselves from the Sinai. You can't occupy it. And they did it. And there was a time when, Israel, it was this fledgling state, and it didn't have the backing it has now to basically say, fuck you to the US, we're going to do what we want, which is basically what they've been doing since then, more or less. But the US has been greenlighting it. We give them $3.8 billion a year. A lot of that is non-discretionary, so they can use it for whatever. So, while we're here, just arguing about, like, having the stupid argument about, not us here in this conversation, but in this country, having a stupid argument about, the practicality of Medicare for all, we're funding Israelis' universal health care with that $3.8 billion. They're using that money to buy a certain amount of our weapons, and then also to manufacture their own weapons to then experiment with on Gazans who are caged in the world's largest open air prison, just a complete ghetto if there ever were one. And there's a lot of money involved in that. There's a lot of power. There's a lot of influence. This brings up AIPAC and other Israel lobbies. And, now they're working really hard to try to conflate anti-Zionism. I mean, they've always been trying to do this, but I've seen it ramped up a lot recently, especially with, comments Ilhan Omar made, I think early last year.
Was that the All About the Benjamins thing?
Yeah. She was responding to, I think, a tweet by Glenn Greenwald, actually, which is ironic given that he's Jewish. But anyway, there's this strong push now, like stronger than I've ever seen, to try to equate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, and to equate Zionism with Judaism. And Zionism and Judaism are not the same thing. Judaism, it's a culture, it's a religion. Zionism is a philosophy that was like wrangled out of that and distorted.
Well, it's a political ideology.
Yeah.
And it's Anglican in origin. I'm sorry to cut you off there, but yeah, like these are important distinctions that, like, even though there's a million people who have commented on it, like, I feel like if we're gonna get it right somewhere, we should get it right, on the show here, and it's a political ideology used to manipulate religious fervor into getting decent people comfortable with genocide.
Yeah. And when we wag our finger at Israel for, building more illegal Jewish-only colonies in the West Bank, we're just finger wagging. We don't do anything about it. There's no government, there's no congressional push to even complain about it. Everybody is
Well, over 30 members of Congress have dual U.S. Israeli citizenship.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to bring up too, is that, people say this dual loyalty argument is anti-Semitic simply because they don't want to have the conversation, because the truth is one they don't want to accept. But a prime example of this is, look at Google Michael Oren when you get a chance, last name Oren. He was born in New Jersey. He was the Israeli ambassador to the United States from 2009 to 2013. And on Wikipedia, his citizenship is listed as Israeli 1979 to present, American 1955 to 2009. So he has dual citizenship. I don't see how pointing that fact out is anti-Semitic. So I think that's just another tactic that pro-Israeli Zionists try to make to shut down the debate, to skew the conversation toward anti-Semitism that isn't really there. And they don't realize that at the same time, they're making actual anti-Semitism respectable, because it's like the boy who cried wolf syndrome. Pretty soon people they're not going to believe you when you're called, when you call somebody anti-Semitic and they actually have said or done something anti-Semitic.
Except for because the propaganda works so well, people are hardwired, pre-programmed to accept that any criticism of Zionism is in fact anti-Semitic behavior. Look at what happened to Jeremy Corbyn and Chris Williamson. Look at, like, to this day, it's still going on. Aaron Mate tweeted out that political cartoon from one of the UK papers that showed like a very crazy, disheveled looking Jeremy Corbyn watering the tree of anti-Semitism. And it's fucking disgusting. At the same time, we've got tape of Joe Biden going, "I'm a Zionist. You don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist." And like,
he's right.
He's right. He means that shit, and he is proud of it.
Yeah.
And if we don't have these conversations, if we don't draw a very clear distinction between people who follow one of the three Abrahamic faiths and people who are engaged in a political ideology with genocide as its core, then we're not doing our jobs. We're doing a bad job. We're not having a productive conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And just going back to the finger wagging, the other point I wanted to make too is that when we wag our finger at Israel, which is essentially all we ever do if we have any critical response, is just give them the ammunition to say, well, how did your desert bloom? How was your country founded? How did you make your way to where you are now? And, they're correct in asking that, but that doesn't make what the genocide they've been committing against Palestinians since I would say even earlier than 1947, it started. It doesn't make that correct. Two wrongs don't make a right. But I think that's part of the geopolitical problem, is that you're basically dealing with two parasitic or symbiotic imperialist genocidal entities, and how you can expect either of them to negotiate peace or to provide Palestinians with even an iota of self-determination. I don't see it happening. I don't know why anybody ever thought that was the best path to giving Palestinians, as if they need to be given, letting Palestinians have their self-determination, and do as they see fit with their lives. I don't know why Well, it's obvious why, because power, holds the sum of the cards. But that the idea that the U.S. and Israel, two states founded on genocide, both still perpetuating genocide, that they could bring about peace in this to this historical, just beyond crisis, is ludicrous to me, especially at this point. As is the two-state solution.
Well, and that's what,
Yeah,
it's what infinitely
Go ahead.
me off about one Bernard Jesus Sanders, is that he was an advocate of this entirely outmoded, entirely ridiculous at its root solution, and would talk about a two-state solution as if it would unwind the clock,
Right.
And I don't know if that is naivety or hubris or both, but it's disingenuous as fuck.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jesse.
I think it's imperial hubris for sure. It's also, if you're an American politician, especially one who's running for office, especially if you're running for the office of president, it's a position that you have to take, at least if you want to seem progressive, but not even progressive. I mean, I'm pretty sure Joe Biden, regurgitates the same tired talking point that he's committed, whatever that means, to a two-state solution. And you wonder if any of these people have looked at a map of the West Bank recently and understand basic geography, and that there's no possibility for a contiguous Palestinian state anymore. Israel's made that impossible with its settlements that it keeps building, which are illegal, which are for Jews and Jews only, and are cutting up and through Palestinian land, literally destroying people's lives and homes and property, their livelihoods. I don't see, if somebody can explain to me how a two-state solution can be cut out of that, I'd like to know. But these politicians are just, they're either ahistorical and or they're just towing the party line, and it cuts across both parties. It's, we're friends of Israel, but we're committed to a two-state solution, and the Palestinians can have we're going to get a statelet for them, but they won't have a military. They won't have an airport. We'll control their borders still. It's just how far the Palestinians' situation has deteriorated. It's shocking to me from when I first became interested in what's been happening in Palestine, which was about 14 years ago now. And I didn't think it would get as bad as it is now. If you look at the Great March of Return, for example, just children, medics, Razan al-Najjar, who was a medic, shot in the back by an Israeli sniper. And then they put out this hideous propaganda piece trying to smear her as a human shield. I mean, maybe I was naive. I've been naive, but I never thought it would get this disgusting, a total irreverence for Palestinians' human lives. It's
the one shot, two kills t-shirts that the IDF was fucking circulating.
Oh my God, that was hideous. I've never seen.
You guys are watching right now and you don't know what I'm talking about. A couple of years back, the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, they were marketing these shirts, and it had a like caricature of a Bedouin woman, meant to signify a difference between Semitic peoples. And it had her in crosshairs, and she was pregnant, and it said one shot, two kills.
Yeah, I remember that.
So disgusting. So disgusting. But just a little self-promotion. Jesse and I had a really awesome conversation with Dan Cohen. I don't know, maybe a few weeks ago, where we talked about the current situation in Israel and the annexation and all that stuff. So if anybody wants to go check that out, Dan was awesome, very insightful. So that was a really good, chat that we had.
You guys should be plugging your show throughout this interview. You should.
I'm really
the whole point of having you on is to get the Slow News Day audience up and over and involved in facts on the ground.
I posted something about the show on Twitter and didn't link to it. So I suck at self-promotion.
I'm terrible at it. I'm absolutely terrible at it.
I'm really good at promoting your show and Action for Assange, but I'm not so good at promoting myself. It's a little harder.
Fuck it. Dame Kathy Vogan, who's the producer for CN Live.
I love her.
She sent me a clip that she made in her own time, based on the interview that we did with her on the show. And I don't know if you've gotten a chance to take it out and check it out or not yet. Like she posted it, I may have RT'd it or something, but she went and, like, if she had used somebody else's words, paraphrasing, she went and found the clip of them on CN Live and inserted that into this.
Right.
So instead of saying, and Daniel Ellsberg said, it's right. Daniel Ellsberg saying it. And, like, that's promotion on a level that I was so far above what I would even think of, like I can't even watch my own shit. So getting timestamps of something that, like, I want to clip out. No, dude, I still haven't rewatched the Mother's Day with Reverend Annie show, even though I know that those clips need to be out there. R.A. the Rugged Man got a hold of me last week going, hey, can I get some clips of when I was on your show? And I'm like, yeah, no problem. I'll get right on that. And it's now almost a week later, and I've done zero of making sure that that's happened.
I feel you're
so fucking frustrating. Where I'm getting at with that is, if anyone in the chat wants to download the R.A. the Rugged Man interview and then send me timestamps of what you think might make good clips, we'll make clips out of it. But, like, once I eventually roll out merch, there's a fucking t-shirt in it for you. I swear to God. Show's almost 2 years old. I haven't made so much as a sticker. Like, I'm bad at this shit. I really am. That's not entirely true. We did make stickers when we went to DC, the whistleblower ones. If you guys never saw those, there was a whistle in the middle of it, and it said, if you are a member of the national security apparatus, blow me.
I have a whistle back there that says blow me. I don't know if you guys can see it because it's kind of fuzzy, but I have a whistle back there that says blow me too.
Excellent.
I love whistleblowers. But I'm really bad at self-promotion too, and it's mostly because I still am confused when anybody gives a shit what I have to say about anything. So it's always like, what? Whatever.
Just getting back to Israel, I think I'm glad that somebody or if multiple people brought it up in the chat, because I think it is at the crux of American foreign policy. It is probably the biggest, I don't want to boil it down to just being a flaw, because it's much more than that. It's genocide what the U.S. is helping to perpetrate there. But at the core of the U.S.'s problems in the Middle East, in Afghanistan, is this 70-plus year support for Israeli genocide against Palestinians. And it's this can that just keeps getting kicked down the road. And I don't know if, people at the top are just hoping the Palestinians will give up and walk into the sea in despair, or flee to Jordan in despair, which they're not going to do because they're strong, resilient people. They're not going to give up their resistance, as the Great March of Return shows. And what a hypocrisy on the part of people who, would say, we can't negotiate with the Palestinians until we have a Palestinian equivalent of Gandhi, right? Somebody who's ostensibly protesting their repression, their extinction in a peaceful way.
So they want a malleable secular racist.
But then you have, which they certainly pick their bedfellows. Israel certainly picks its Palestinian bedfellows wisely. I mean, look at Arafat and Mahmoud Abbas, or Abu Mazen, if you wish. But I lost the point I was trying to make. What was I saying?
Sorry, man. I'm notorious for that shit. I will derail a conversation faster than you can say, those are good mushrooms.
They're kicking in, huh? Feeling good, Steve?
Like an hour ago. So always take your psychedelics on an empty stomach. Always.
Right? You did get quite a bit more lively. I did notice that.
You know what, man? I really I don't take enough to go. I actually follow the fucking ridiculously capitalistic model of microdosing. And by that, I mean, taking small amounts of psychedelics to increase your productivity for your employer. But on this setting, I'm my own employer. So I'm increasing my productivity for the people who are watching, not so that someone can get a boat that fits inside a boat based off of my labor.
That seems reasonable.
I remember.
Jesse, I forget now.
I remembered what I was going to get. What I was just trying to get at, which isn't. I think it's pretty obvious to people who have their finger on the pulse, but the U.S. and Israel, I don't think, have any intention of giving, if you will, the Palestinians the self-determination that all peoples deserve. If they did, it would have happened by now. And again, that's the crux of, I think, of all of everything the U.S. is involved in the Middle East, from Syria to Libya to outside of the Middle East, Afghanistan. People in all of those regions know what Israel has done and is doing to the Palestinians. They're not stupid. They know America's participation in it. They see where the bombs that fall are manufactured in the fragments, and it enrages them. And they despise the United States government. I should point that out, the government, immensely. And they don't look at the United States as any kind of fair broker. They look at it as a snake in the grass, which it essentially is. It uses proxies and then throws them away. Blowback be damned. That's how we got Al-Qaeda. And until the U.S. actually becomes a completely objective broker of peace, which I have my money on never happening, the Palestinians, their lives are going to get worse and worse, and nobody really seems to give a fuck anymore outside of our circles. And it's really sad, watching a genocide happen in real time. And I get messages from people in Gaza I follow all the time, literally, I mean, not begging, but really kind of desperately asking me to send money.
Yeah, me too.
I've sent money a few times, once I've verified that it's not a scam. But it's like, and it's impossible to travel there now, so you can't really go see what's happening firsthand anymore. Maybe you could get into the West Bank. I'm not sure, but I think Gaza is pretty much off limits. And yeah, so what can you do if you can't bear witness, if you can't go there and bear witness and try to do some good on the ground? Like, suppose you could try to give what money you can, but it's just the amount of messages I get like that are just, it's heartbreaking. And again, I know
well,
people,
and
I know people out
$100
there.
or whatever, your $10, your $50, your $100, that's running up against true Western bipartisanship in the brokering of settlements, where both Chuck Schumer's family and Jared Kushner's family work out of the same office brokering these settlements.
Yeah.
And until we've kind of like decoupled the profit motive from genocide, like we're fucked, and I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, I don't either, because the way the genocide is being carried out now with this high-tech weaponry, it's making profits for so many corporations, for so many people. It's making so many people rich. It's satisfying so many people. Disgusting behemoths like Sheldon Adelson, who was basically responsible for getting Trump elected, at least on the financial side. These people, I don't know what, aside from money, their vested interest is in, eradicating Palestinians and creating their dream of greater Israel. I don't think they really believe in Judaism. In fact, Netanyahu has called himself an atheist. He dons his kippah now and then, and puts on the act, but he's on record, I believe, as saying he's an atheist. He doesn't really subscribe to the Jewish religion, and so in that sense, he's like the perfect Zionist, if you will. But just going off of that, I mean, you look at the people who were supposed to invest our trust in, with regard to, again, giving Palestinians their freedom. These people are psychopaths. They don't care about Palestinians at all. And I know, and I don't mean to say, when I said people out there don't give a fuck anymore, like, I know a lot of people care, and people are getting woke to the idea that, or to the reality of what's happening to Palestinians. So I don't mean that. I'm not cynical about that. I'm cynical about people in government who say they care and they really don't give a fuck. They think it's, they have to say what they have to say, or, you have some just dimwit like Ocasio-Cortez, come out staunchly in support of Palestinian self-determination and BDS, and then, walk it back like a doddering fool, like worse than Joe Biden on when she was interviewed, I think on, I forget by who, I think it was on BBC. I forget whom the interviewer was, but it's like used as sort of like a playing card now, what's happening to the Palestinians, at least in as far as politics go. And people don't really give a fuck anymore. Even if they know how bad the situation is, they don't. It's just this other political obstacle they have to negotiate to keep themselves in office, to keep their constituency, etc. It's just another one of those touchy issues they have to navigate carefully if they want to remain where they are.
I got a $5 super chat from Mana Talk that I should scroll back up to and find. National strike on 9/9/2020. I should probably get a couple of people who are organizing that on the show. Thank you, James. Abby Martin is being both kicked and defended in the chat. And look, man,
All that.
I've never met Abby Martin. I've never met Mike Preisner. I've never met Robbie Martin. I don't know any of them personally, so I definitely can't speak to their motivations.
What are the kicks against Abby?
Well, so Abby got on her platforming high horse about Unity for Jay, and won't go anywhere near Action for Assange because we've had on people who don't believe lockstep with what Rose Twitter believes. So because of that must therefore automatically mean that Unity for Jay and Action for Assange condone and espouse 100% of the ideologies of the people that we have had on the show. And that is a farcical, bullshit, dangerous, disingenuous premise. As far as I'm concerned. Now, that's entirely separate from the work that she's done in terms of Palestinian rights. It's entirely separate from the work that she was doing with Telesur. But it does kind of give you it gives you a picture of like just how dangerous team mentality is when you're trying to discuss something in a post-partisan manner. And Abby Martin specifically is one of the reasons that Action for Assange has been trying to hammer home this isn't a partisan issue.
Right.
This isn't something that yes, it takes place in the political space because there are hostile political powers trying to snuff out investigative journalism, but investigative journalism is post-partisan, non-partisan, and I think somewhere like down in the core of her being, she understands that, but I don't think that there's at this point. I don't think that we're going to see Abby or even Mike, and definitely not Robbie Martin, walking away from that viewpoint. You know?
I don't know anything about that. I guess kerfuffle, I should say again.
There is some salacious fucking gossip surrounding that I don't want to go into. But there's a backstory there.
I do remember the whole platforming thing and her having a problem with people having certain people on their shows and stuff. I didn't really follow it that much, to be honest.
Well, look who it was. Look who she had a problem with, and that will give you a pretty clear.
I don't even know who was it.
Cassandra Fairbanks.
Oh, okay. No, that makes sense.
Who used to be Mike Preisner's girlfriend.
Oh,
really?
Before Abby and Mike started dating.
Oh, okay.
Palace intrigue.
Yeah.
Cassandra and Abby used to be really, really good friends. But I mean, that's basically the crux of it. But out of that personal relationship and that sort of triangle there, like this whole concept of platforming was thrown over it as the cover for I don't like this particular person because we used to be roommates and we had a falling out.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I get that now. Yeah, I don't like drama, so I don't follow that shit. It drives me nuts.
I didn't want to know about any of that, Misty. I had no desire to ever fucking have this knowledge in my head. But when you work on a show that picked up where Unity for Jay left off,
yeah, you kind of get
the issues that surrounded Unity for Jay, inevitably spill over, and it's just like it's it's nothing that like we ever bring up or concentrate on. It's just, you know, everybody that does a show has that like list of people that they would like to have on the show someday, and it just means you cross out a name or two.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah,
I really like Abby. She does great work, I think.
She does necessary work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. I think Mike has been an invaluable resource as well with regard to vets who've returned stateside to from Iraq and Afghanistan, and the trauma they've been through. And you know, he went over there pretty much gung-ho about what he was doing, and he came back completely changed. And I think he's out of that actual change in his I guess political perspective, his geopolitical perspective. You know, I think he's done a lot of good things. He and Abby recently made Killing Gaza, which is an excellent documentary. He does the Eyes Left podcast with Spencer Rapone, who's another vet. So I think both he and Abby do very good, indispensable work. And I don't know anything about what's happened, but hopefully cooler heads will prevail.
Yeah, and I mean, look, dude, it's not like in this particular instance there wasn't reason to be wary or suspect of anyone connected, even loosely, let alone working for Cernovich or Jack Probiesic, or however you say that dude's name. But like, for example, if you go to Cassandra Fairbanks' Twitter timeline right now and look at the comment section, it basically looks like 4chan from 2001. It's fucking, it's pretty vile. It is. But that, and again, dude, like that's just more high school bullshit, and what at least what Unity for Jay was trying to do and what Action for Assange is trying to do is, you know, save a guy's life in the future of investigative journalism. And that means sticking up for the journalists who do fucking clickbait garbage that confirms the biases of fucking, you know, absolute fucking Nazis. It really does.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Not sorry.
That's part.
I agree.
Not sorry. Yeah, that's part.
I agree. I think Alex Jones can have his platform and piss in the wind all he wants. Don't watch it. Don't listen to it if you don't like it. But don't take away.
Josh, would it be possible to close out the show with the Alex Jones indie folk song thing?
Yeah, I can make that happen.
Okay, let's do that, and because we're gonna, I need to wrap here in the next like 10 minutes or so. So when Josh has that set up, I will ask you guys to give me your final thoughts and whatnot. Really didn't want the show to turn into fucking gossip corner. And look, and again, man, I do need to say, like, I respect the fuck out of the body of work that Abby's created, that Preisner's created. I don't know anything about Eyes Left podcast, but I do know
it's really good.
That
it's I listened to it. It's good.
I do know that that Danny Sherson speaks highly of it, and Danny's a guy that I respect a lot.
Yeah, I don't know him. Misty, I think you texted me mentioning him last night.
He's amazing. He's great. Yeah. He's been on. Has he been on Slow News Day, or has he just been on the Vigils? He's
been on both.
Okay, because I told you I never know which one they all melt together in my brain. Yeah, he's been on both. I was on one of the vigils that he was on and got to talk to him, and yeah, he's
with
great.
Kevin Zeese.
That was fun.
Ooh, fun
I'm
times.
so happy that interview took place before the whole Green Party thing blew up, because I'm not great at like keeping like not talking about stuff. So I probably would have looked at something really stupid.
There's no unringing that bell, though.
Yeah, I feel you. That's an interesting situation for sure.
Look, man, it sucks to be cut off from a potential ally or a potential resource. You know, it does. But at the same time, and I told Ian this, and I was basically paraphrasing Julian Assange at the same time. Like, I'm on the side of the truth on this one. Julian said you have to start with the truth. The truth is the only way that we can get anywhere, because any decision or any decision making that is based on lies or ignorance can't lead to a good conclusion. And that to me is the fundament of good journalism, is starting from that point, regardless of who you're going to piss off in the process. And in Julian Assange, we see the end result of pissing off the wrong people in your quest for starting with the truth.
Yeah, and I think what Julian's case has shown us over all these years is just how vulnerable U.S. empire in particular is, or how vulnerable it's feeling itself to be, especially these days, when it's, I think, clearly coming apart in front of our eyes. If you think about Julian, he's one man, right? You think about WikiLeaks. I don't know how large the organization is, but I know it's DIY, if you want to put it that way, right? And it's able to amass so much damaging and necessary information and expose it to people who consume journalism, people who care about what's happening in the world. And you think about like Julian and WikiLeaks, like staring down the entire like military, industrial, national security state complex, and they really are scared of him. And it shows you, I think it gives a glimpse, at least, into how fickle those institutions are, and this empire we live in, how fickle it is too, and that it is coming to an end. And I don't know what that means. I'm not saying it's Armageddon, but these institutions are genuinely scared of people like Julian and organizations like WikiLeaks or publishers like WikiLeaks, who can essentially reveal their darkest secrets, the ones they don't want out there, that they don't want us to know. I mean, as soon as I saw the Collateral murder video, I was on board with what WikiLeaks was doing. You know, this is what Americans need to be seeing. Why isn't this on CNN every time it happens, right?
Well, and it was because it made people feel good about their choice to elect Barack Obama. And as soon as WikiLeaks showed them that their choice in electing Barack Obama was just as fucked up as electing George Bush, or if they would have elected John McCain, that's when the vast majority of rank and file Democrats, and certainly all the politicians, didn't so much throw Julian Assange under the bus as they did hire a fleet of buses to just sort of circle around his orbit, waiting to run him over and then back up, and then run him over and back up, and run him over and back up. Mm-hmm. So it's this weird spot where, like, Americans are fine with you disclosing war crimes as long as it paints their personal political opponent in a bad light. But as soon as it paints their pet politician in a bad light, then the person who delivered the information is the bad guy. Jimmy Dore is right when he says that Americans are adult children of alcoholics.
He absolutely is right. Yes.
He's 100% bang on that one.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. It's so, and that it's, I mean, we've talked about this before. We see it now with like the Bernie people, and the hero worship is one of our biggest obstacles, man. It's so bad. It's really just so bad. I mean, Nico tweeted out something earlier about, behind the scenes look at independent media. If you criticize AOC, you're going to get clobbered. Like you're going to get, people are going to come after you. And that's ridiculous. So ridiculous.
Well,
but that's what works.
I've compiled a lot of evidence to show that AOC is a charlatan.
Hey, let's do a show. Let's do a whole show.
I'm down.
Pointing it out.
And if anybody wants sources,
nobody can do it. So let's do it.
Yeah, I've tweeted out against her many times and have some sources and votes, and there are people out there who get it. But again, it's like the same way people want to have this, I don't know, just evidence-based faith in a leader like Donald Trump having nefarious connections to Russia or to Putin. They want to. It's the flip side of that is believing like somebody like Ocasio-Cortez is a saint. She can do no wrong, even though the first vote she cast when
for Pago, right?
Yeah, it was to expand, to continue supporting and expanding NATO, and it's that. I think that betrays a lot right there, especially if you go back to her campaign platform and read that one of the initiatives was a peace economy, which I think is directly at odds with voting for the continued funding and expansion of NATO. That doesn't seem like economics in service of peace to me, but maybe she knows something from her bartending days that I don't.
So I mean,
the bartenders
from the onset of her candidacy into her being sworn in and becoming what she currently is, which is apparently Cornel West's favorite potential presidential candidate, which is a whole different fucking shit sandwich that everybody's got to eat right now.
Thanks for that.
God.
Thanks for that.
Huh?
Thank you for that.
Yeah. No, Jesus, man. AOC has been I guess a limited hangout. I saw this shit coming a mile away, and I took so much grief for it. Fucking just heaps of shit piled on me. And I was like a brand new show and a brand new fucking Twitter account, and I'm like, here's why your hero sucks. It was a weird position to be in, but every time I would do that, there would be a few people that are like, well, prove it. And then I could show them a voting record. I could show them.
No, that's when they block you every time. It never fails. It never fails when you go, at least for me, when I, criticize Bernie or AOC or anybody, and because I criticize across the board, but people, oh yeah, well, you don't have proof of that. Like Bernie's imperialism. Oh, he's not an imperialist, really? Here's his record, and then they block me. It's like
HR 3494 is all you really need to know about AOC and the squad. And what was HR 3494? It was a bill that gave almost impossibly more immunity to the CIA. And now it's codified into U.S. law that journalistic institutions must maintain the cover identities of people who work for the CIA, not active duty agents, but like low-level analysts, not field operatives, but bureaucrats.
Mm-hmm.
And they enjoy not only anonymity in the press, but immunity from prosecution. And AOC signed on to that shit.
Mm-hmm.
This is also like right around the same time that she was deferring to leadership on Venezuela and shit like that. And yet we've got Cornell West.
Oh, it hurts me. Stop it.
I gotta do it, man.
I know.
The like one of the main images for Slow News Day is a family standing around a barbecue wearing gas masks, and we fucking grill up sacred cows here. We do. Look, man, if you guys would stop, not you guys personally, Jesse and Misty, but people in general, if y'all motherfuckers would stop deifying politicians, I wouldn't have to put them on the grill. I wouldn't. Stop making heroes out of people who don't take the job unless it's like some sort of weird power fucking thing. Like, I've seen what happens to people.
Don't have heroes. Don't have heroes. Nobody is worth, turning into putting on a pedestal. Every one of them is human. In Cornell West, God, I love Cornell West. He's a badass. But I'm sorry, guys. I gotta break ways with Cornell West when he starts, standing for somebody like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
And Joe Biden. Let's not forget that, man. That was a painful interview, dude.
I can tell you that the past couple months watching Jill Stein and Najama Baraka get behind Howie Hawkins and watching Cornell West get behind Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Joe Biden. And dude, it's been a brutal few months. It really has. Like all these people that think are on your side and that are, kind of revolutionary thinkers, and they're falling in line, and it sucks so hard.
Yeah.
Painful.
Well, it's almost as if they look, let's not pull punches. Cornell West he's bourgeois. Okay. He's of the bourgeoisie at this point, especially in academia. I agree with you. He's done great work. I've met him in person. He's an extremely nice man who's willing to actually take the time and speak with you and ask how you're doing. That was during a march for Gaza in 2014 in New York. So he was out in the streets marching as well. So yeah, it's almost as if though he's sort of like in a Chomsky way, like they see, like, well, the ship is sinking. It's going faster and faster each day. And we got to start hedging our bets. So, it automatically becomes the lesser of two evils, and then trying to prop up and promote the lesser of those two evils so that, they don't go down with a sinking ship, as if Trump wins again. Do people think he's just going to all of a sudden declare martial law the first day, he steps back into office? It's shitty things ahead for sure if he wins again. And I never have and never will support him. But I never have and never will support Joe Biden either. And if you take a step back and imagine Joe Biden on the world stage, like meeting with Vladimir Putin or Assad, right? Which would never happen because we can't talk to him. He's horrible. It's
Joe Biden and Jair Bolsonaro is a summit that I want to watch.
Could
Who
you
poops
see?
himself first?
I'm not gonna lie, guys. I want to watch Joe Biden meet with just about anybody because that would be hilarious. And we need some entertainment in our lives. And he's so ridiculous that, like,
Hey, I'm Joe Biden. Can I smell your wife?
hey, can you feel my leg hairs? You know, like, come on, guys, that would be so funny. I would I mean, listen, Putin's my buddy. I would love for Joe Biden to go meet with Putin. That would be amazing. It would be so great. But
Yeah.
it needs to be televised because that, seriously, we all need a good laugh these days.
I feel like Biden would walk in the room and his head would explode because it's just been so pumped full of Russiagate and dementia. Like,
I was gonna say,
but whatever weird cocktail of Alzheimer's staving off drugs that inevitably have to be shot up into that piece of shit every single time they fucking push him in front of a camera. You know what I want, and I'm going to. We just discussed the origin and the items on WikiLeaks most wanted leaks list on the vigil the other day. I think maybe even yesterday. Here's what I want. I want someone in the global hacktivist community to get and leak the contents of the congressional pharmacy, because Congress has its own pharmacy.
mhm.
I think that like most people know that, but I want to know what drugs the people who make the decisions that affect our lives. I want to know what drugs they're on.
Dude, you have to take a drug test to get a job at Target, but you don't have to take a drug test to work in Congress. That's completely fucking ridiculous. You know they're all coked up and who knows what else they're on. I mean,
Lawyers.
I would love
Lawyers.
What?
Lawyers, all of them.
Oh, all yeah.
Yeah. When was the filibuster that didn't involve cocaine?
Right? Totally.
And these are like the people that you would never want to do coke with either. Can you imagine doing cocaine with Ted Cruz?
I was just gonna say Ted Cruz. That's so amazing.
Like, can you imagine that shit? How you'd just be like, "Oh my god, what have I done? Get me out!"
Even if he offered me the purest possible cocaine,
you know he's got it too.
I would.
Yeah.
I would turn it down because cocaine makes you friendly with people you otherwise normally wouldn't be friendly with, and I don't want to become friendly with Ted Cruz.
Let's start a business.
Right? Oh God, I would immediately be like, so tell me about how you're the Zodiac killer.
Right?
Have you Zodiac killed anyone lately? Have you done that? Have you? Tell what is the fucking? I don't even know, man. Josh, were you successfully able to get that clip up?
Yes.
Okay. In that case, will the two of you please give me some final thoughts? Make sure that everyone knows where to find you, and just thanks for doing the show today. This has been a lot of fun. Like, I'm starting to get washed out in green light because I have a fucking plastic green roof out here, and that lets me know that we've been going for at least 2 hours now. And I haven't noticed the passage of time like at all.
Yeah.
At all. So thank you, man. This has been really enjoyable.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Steve.
Go ahead, Jesse. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry for being late. Won't happen again, I promise.
You liar.
But Misty and I co-host a podcast called Facts on the Ground, and it can be found. Hopefully, Josh, you can. Sorry, not Josh. Steve, you can link to it in the show notes. YouTube channel.
Because I do show notes.
I
will make.
I did it before the show. It's already in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Josh.
In the chat if you want to. Yeah.
Okay. You can find us on Twitter at FOTG Podcast. You can find me on Twitter at Jesse Zurwell. That's JESSEZURAWELL. And Misty, how about you?
Yeah, you can just find me on Twitter at Sarcasm Stardust. And yeah, we have a couple. Jesse started, like I said at the beginning of the show, Jesse had started the show on his own, and then we have a few episodes together that we've started, and we have a lot of interesting ideas that we're coming up with, and I'm really excited for you guys to see some of the things that we plan on covering. Hopefully, and if you guys have any ideas, hit me up on Twitter. If there's something, there's an issue that I'm totally like open to everybody's. If you have like something that you really want to see covered that you don't think is getting enough coverage, hit me up. We're totally open to ideas and anything you guys want to hear or see or whatever. So yeah, just follow us on to the channel, and yeah, I think that's it. Steve, seriously, thank you. You came on our show. We just released that yesterday, and then having us on your show today, and I just really appreciate it. You've been like one of the most supportive people. You're one of the reasons why I was brave enough to actually do it. So yeah, I just appreciate you.
Yeah. I just want to thank you again, Steve, for having us on. Thanks for coming on our show the other night. It was a nice mutual exchange.
Fun.
And I want to thank everybody who's been watching and subscribing. It's not that I'm not good at responding to comments and whatnot. It's just time is limited, but I do read everything. We do read everything that comes up, and we appreciate all your views and all your support. And if you can stick in solidarity with us from here on out, we'd really appreciate it. And I also just wanted to say, I think, Steve, you mentioned earlier how, this show can get sort of go off on tangents, but I think that's important because even in the context of Julian Assange, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. A lot of what we were talking about is connected to it. He's exposing things that are happening in, the wars we spoke about, for example, or what certain politicians are doing. And so I think it's worth it to go off on those tangents and remember that, again, Julian didn't do what he did and doesn't exist in a box. There are so many geopolitical tentacles that spider out from that. So I think that's important to remember, and hopefully makes people realize we're not just rambling on from one random subject to another. But yeah, thank you very much again, Steve. Much appreciated.
Hell yeah. And I'm a guy who thinks that like everything's connected at a molecular level anyway. So and I am prone to tangents. So that's sort of a built-in scientific way to I guess be comfortable in my own idiocy. I don't know. But yeah, I'm gonna start rambling here. So just thank you guys so much. Thanks to Sleepy Josh on the ones and twos, and we are going to close the show with Alex Jones rants done as indie folk song, which I imagine is what Chad Wilson's band sounds like. Good luck.
And that's why we're just out here doing simple things, pointing up and store the paradigm of absolute control. And that's why we're just out here doing simple things, pointing out that we're meant to be in nature and be natural. And this is where we find the source that God made to transcend the New World Order. And that's why they want to try to keep us out of it.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people. They're a bunch of Christian murderers scum. They're on giant death factories keeping babies alive and selling their body parts. What more do you need to know about these people? I go out and face these scum. They literally crawl out from under rocks. They have green looking skin and they run around screaming, we love Satan, we wanna eat babies. him on video. Hillary's in the creepy, weird, sick stuff, man. She sleeps in the same room with that creepy, weird woman whose mother wears a hood over her head. What the hell? That woman number one is ugly. Imagine how bad she smells, man. I'm told her and Obama just stink. Obama and Hillary both smell like sulfur. Literal vampire pot, then the goblins are hobbling round, coming after us. My spirit gets close to that evil and I feel it go. We're such self-centered crap, we don't even notice hell itself rising up against us. Millions of pointed people of the very worst type, and I'm so pissed. We're gonna stab your daughter at the mall. We're gonna stab your wife, your son. We're gonna stab you with a butcher knife, and then the police chief is gonna say, we love our Somalis, we love our Muslims. Oh, they're so good, oh, they're so sweet.
I was watching Fox News as I worked out this morning.